That's really good. So in the spirit of generosity, I mean, we talk about generosity and we're constantly trying to find ways to act that out, like not just encourage other people to do it, but like take our own advice. And so that's partly what this podcast about. That is very specifically partly what this episode is about. Like we're telling you guys exactly what we tell our clients. But also we have a 1-hour masterclass that was conceived in part because we want to meet and align with businesses that we might be able to serve. Obviously, like that's no secret, but it was also conceived in an attempt to be actually generous. So if you're interested in our 3-step growth system, if you're interested in if we're the kind of company for you, or if you're interested in what like these kinds of methods might look like at some other company you're looking at, take our masterclass. It's yours for the taking. It's totally free. Follow the link. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Share the love if you don't mind. We'd love that. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.